Solar winds swept clean this planet 4.5 billion years ago. Earth thrived. Its natural elements helped it to flourish, and its bounty was for all to share. Then a life form of superior intelligence evolved, and for a while lived in harmony with the Earth. But paradise has been put into jeopardy. The motives are irrelevant. The consequences, severe. The remedy is written. The elements of life are clear.
In this episode of Elements, the National Forestry Championships, held every 2 years in the German town of Glien. Lumberjacks demonstrate the skill and precision they've mastered while working in the forests. For more than a century, researchers at the School of Tropical Medicine in Liverpool have been responsible for some of the key discoveries in the field of tropical disease. Their most famous discovery, the transmission of malaria by mosquitoes, which they've continued to combat to this day. With sea levels rising as a result of global warming, low-lying Netherlands has found more space by building floating houses. Now there are plans in place for full-scale floating cities by the year 2050. And a troop of monkeys is raising havoc at a school in southern Thailand, snatching sandwiches and sweets right out of children's lunchboxes. Unfortunately, the hungry primates have no choice as their mangrove environment is slowly disappearing. Those stories and more coming up in Elements. But first, this 20-year-old male turtle became the only one of its kind in Thailand to receive a man-made shell. Rama 9, who lived in a pond beside a busy Bangkok thoroughfare of the same name, was crossing the road when a pickup truck ran over him in October last year. 2/3 of his natural shell was smashed by the accident. Shards of it pierced his lungs and other internal organs. After the accident, vets gave him no more than a 20% chance of survival, realizing if Rama 9 was to be saved, it would take some drastic innovations. Thailand is home to 4 species of marine turtle: the green, the leatherback, the olive ridley and the hawksbill, and all 4 are on the endangered species list. The loggerhead turtle also once swam in Thai waters until the consistent plundering of its eggs rendered it locally extinct. Facts like these drive the vets to save as many of the creatures as they can, even if that means constructing complete new shells from scratch. The veterinarians from the Chulalongkorn University Animal Clinic decided to build a shell out of fiberglass to protect Rama 9 from leeches, egg-laying insects and other infections. They attached it to the remainder of his old shell and his body using wire and superglue. It wasn't the most dignified procedure to put the poor thing through, but he didn't seem to mind too much. Rama was first fitted out with the shell on a Friday, but his portable home needed some renovation. The vets made minor adjustments over the weekend and by Monday strapped him into his new home, which he'll carry with him for at least a year until his own natural shell grows back. While Rama 9 looks completely at ease in his new shell, it took the vets some trial and error to create the perfect home away from home. Before settling on fiberglass, they did try several other materials to hold together shell fractures, which were divided into almost 20 separate pieces. When it comes to helping animals in need, the Tasmanian Conservation Trust deserves as much credit as those dedicated vets from Thailand. Penguin rescuers have taken to cleaning oil-covered fairy penguins and dressing them in specially knitted jumpers, which not only keep them warm until their own natural oils are replenished, but also limit the amount of oil they ingest during preening. The The Trust made a local appeal earlier this year for protective penguin jumpers following a large oil spill off the coast of Tasmania, not realising that they would be inundated. Community groups such as the staff at a Launceston library have since been knitting jumpers by the hundreds, although some have come from as far as Japan. The Trust has even received requests for the pattern from as far away as New York. The jumpers cover the 40-centimetre tall penguins from neck to ankle and come in a variety of colours and designs, even a black and white tuxedo jumper complete with bow tie. Joe Castle, a representative of the Trust, said the penguins dislike wearing the jumpers, but at least they stop any birds which encounter an oil slick from ingesting poisonous oils during preening. As for the dedicated army of knitters, they're warned not to use hand-spun natural wool containing lanolin, as lanolin interferes with the bird's waterproofing, much the same as industrial oil does. They're also asked to knit the jumpers very tightly. If they're too loose, the birds get their toenails caught in them and pull the jumpers off. Before being allowed to return to their colonies, the penguins are fed and they swim in a rehabilitation pool each day. Swimming is a great way to encourage the penguins to preen, helping the waterproofing process. Staff regularly monitor the penguins to assess their overall condition. Once waterproofed, they're released back into the wild. The Forestry Workers' Championships, held recently near Nauen in Germany, takes place every 2 years and brings together members of a profession which is widely unknown. According to the forestry workers themselves, the overall majority of Germany's population who live in the cities have no idea what they actually do, which is why they leave the woods occasionally to demonstrate their skills with a chainsaw or axe. The Forestry Workers' Championships have a long tradition in what used to be East Germany, and it was only natural to hold this year's competition in the eastern state of Brandenburg. In the country known for its huge amount of registered clubs, some specialising in the most obscure hobbies, members of different forestry worker chapters founded the German Forestry Workers' Championships in 1994. This allowed them to cover a wide variety of disciplines within the one competition. And one of the more unusual events is about ready to begin. Competitors race against the clock to disassemble their chainsaws, replace the chains and reassemble their equipment as quickly as they can. These guys make Formula One pit crews look like amateur mechanics. The judges check their stopwatches and declare a new race leader with a time to beat of 16.5 seconds. The next event is even stranger than the last one. A combination of accuracy and luck are required in varying measures for any chance to win. Lumberjacks make precise cuts at the base of the tall poles in the hope that the falling timber will burst balloons further down the course. Highest points are awarded for popping the green balloon, then the orange, and finally the white. While most of the disciplines look a little silly to the uninitiated, each tests an important skill that these forestry workers must master in order to perform their dangerous jobs as safely and efficiently as possible. As spectators look on in amazement, the lumberjacks display a creative side to their trade. The chainsaw carving competition tests both their speed and flair for working with the wood, especially as the saws are vibrating at 1,500 revolutions a minute. A good chainsaw artist can expect to sell a sculpture for between $200 to $5,000 US. This championship is about millimetres, precision, tools and timing. But more importantly, it's a meeting point for Germany's forestry workers, where they can talk shop and have fun with colleagues from all over the country. Liverpool is a city built on maritime trade. It's still a major container port, but a century ago Liverpool was the busiest port in the British Empire after London. The number of sailors who returned to Liverpool from voyages to the tropics, suffering from strange diseases, led to their employers, the major shipping companies, banding together to set up an academic institute to look into the problem. The result was the School of Tropical Medicine, set up in 1898. It was the only institute in the world at the time dedicated to the study of this branch of medicine. Over the years, the school has been at the heart of research into the cause and the transmission of tropical diseases. Equally important has been its role as a teaching and training institution. The school's first director was Sir Ronald Ross, who discovered that malaria was transmitted by the Anopheles mosquito. Ross won Britain's first Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1902 in honour of this groundbreaking research. In the long struggle against malaria, putting laboratory research into practical use has been plagued by the ability of the parasite to mutate and fight back. Some researchers in Liverpool are using the latest genome mapping technology to find ways to prevent mosquitoes from transmitting the disease. The school recently announced that the whole genome of the most important malaria-transmitting mosquito, Anopheles gambiae, will be sequenced. The vast amount of information that will soon be gathered in the process should lead to new control methods, and the work could have implications well beyond malaria. Yellow fever, dengue and filariasis are all tropical diseases spread by mosquitoes. Other groups are tackling malaria further down the line. This is how cerebral malaria kills people. The parasites literally block the blood vessels in the brain of victims. Researchers are looking at how the parasites invade cells and cause them to stick to the walls of blood vessels, eventually blocking them. According to senior lecturer Alistair Craig, the next step would be to create vaccines in order to build up the body's natural immunity to fight malaria. The idea is to make a treatment which, unlike the expensive anti-parasitic drugs on the market, could really help the 1 million children who die each year of malaria, mostly in the world's poorest countries. The Liverpool School is also involved in the Malaria Consortium, an initiative to help countries set up malaria prevention programs using simple but proven methods like insecticide-impregnated bed nets. Lymphatic filariasis is a disfiguring disease caused by a thread-like worm and spread by mosquitoes. In 80 countries, the disease affects 120 million people, often causing gross deformity to the legs in women and in the scrotum of men. While it doesn't kill people, it does have dramatic economic consequences and social consequences for the community. With the help of the World Health Organization, an international cost-effective program has been set up to eliminate the disease, starting with Tanzania. Over 500 students drawn from 65 countries come to Liverpool each year for training. The students shown here are all practicing doctors taking the course in tropical medicine and hygiene. Professor Marcel Hommel is developing computer-based learning packages for students in developing countries who can't afford the costs of studying in Europe. Part of a large grant to combat malaria from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will set up training centres for doctors in Gambia, Tanzania, Malawi and Ghana. Liverpool is working on designing computer training packages for use in these centres. The school's agenda as it enters its second century is to maintain a balance between research, training and health service consultancy work. It even set up its own limited company recently to offer project management and training services in the whole field of international health to countries worldwide. The aim is to make sure the best of the world's research in tropical diseases gets translated into treatments that are available to and affordable for the bulk of the world's population living in areas prone to these diseases. When most people decide to move houses, they don't often take their old house along with them, but someone forgot to tell that to the Dutch. Recognizing the growing scarcity of building ground in the Netherlands, a Dutch construction company has started building houses on water. Made of wood and lightweight aluminium, they're linked to each other by walkways, but can be detached from the surrounding neighborhood and moved. Marketing director Gijsbert van der Weert said his company, Ooms Bouwmaatschappij, has built the first 8 of the planned 500 floating houses on the outskirts of Amsterdam. The houses are designed to withstand gales and can be located up to 100 meters from the shore. For centuries, the Netherlands has fought against invading water with landfills, dams and dikes. But the philosophy is changing in the wake of global warming. Blame for the 20-centimetre rise in sea level over the last century. Instead of driving out the water, the Dutch are trying to live on it. And interest in the novel mode of living has been keen. There are about 5,000 names on the waiting list for the accommodation that sells for between $180,000 and $500,000 US. Already 50% below sea level, the Netherlands is the world's 3rd most densely populated country, which is why Dutch academic Frits Schout has been searching for ways to colonize the sea. A former professor at Delft University, Schout is working on a stabilizing platform that allows communities to live in the middle of oceans unaffected by waves. Schout expects people to start living and working on his unusual floating neighborhoods by 2020, with full-scale floating cities being established by 2050. But for now, Dutch families will have to make do with their glorified houseboats as they wait for the neighbours to float by. And if floating homes aren't to your liking, how about this rickety 12-storey house that cuts through the Archengelk skyline? A lopsided structure nestled between the chimneys of local industrial plants and the tiny dwellings below it. At over 38 meters high, the building is winding its way into the official Russian Book of Records as the highest inhabited wooden building currently in Russia. The publishers are intending to include it in their next edition due out in autumn. The structure evolved in the early 90s after local builder and entrepreneur Nikolai Sutyagin got planning permission to build a wooden 2-storey home for his family. On completion, he decided to open up the area under the roof in order to make better use of the space, as he'd seen done during trips to East Germany. The resulting access to a higher level meant Sutyagin was able to see part of the White Sea from his home for the first time. The beauty of the surrounding area so entranced him, he decided to continue building upwards. Then, as the sea and surrounding countryside unfolded below him, he found he just couldn't stop. He said that he couldn't see the beauty around him before, but now he understands why pilots take to the skies. Excited by the relaxing of Soviet restrictions and potential influx of foreigners into the region, a vision began to form in Sutyagin's head. An internationally acclaimed venue that would draw visitors from all over the globe and enable them to experience the beauty of the place themselves. But as the building grew, it was the local authorities rather than the international globetrotters who were attracted by the lack of any planning permission whatsoever, and potential safety hazards involved with such a frail, flammable structure located so close to neighbouring homes. An outraged Sutiarjin refused to provide the documents demanded and pay the consequent fines, and was duly given a 4-year jail sentence. 2.5 years later, he was released. But to his wife's dismay, his plans are more grandiose than ever and show no signs of abating. Local tourist agencies, challenged for ways of promoting the area, have now begun producing postcards of the monstrosity and are selling them in the surrounding area. Many locals, however, are not so keen. Sutiarjin's elderly neighbours in particular view the building with a realistic suspicion that it could fall down at any moment. But its owner is undeterred. Despite all the protests, he's compelled to finish it. And if he doesn't, his children will. Lunch in the playground is meant to be a relaxing experience for most school children, but not for the kids at Chu Chi School in Samut Songkhram, southern Thailand. Each day they're forced to guard their lunch boxes as dozens of hungry monkeys search the school grounds for any food they can steal. No rubbish bin is left unturned as the primates go on their rampage. School principal Nukul Baibua says the monkeys often jump up onto the children, grabbing food right out of their hands. But they never physically harm the students, just scare them occasionally. Locals say there are 3 main troops of monkeys, numbering about 200 primates in all. Each troop seems to take turns at raiding the school. The monkeys' natural home, a nearby mangrove forest, is slowly disappearing as the local community spreads out and settles the land. While their numbers are increasing, their habitat is growing smaller, and this is the result. The situation has become so bad that wire mesh has been put up around the classroom windows and near the canteen to prevent the animals from getting inside. But the protection doesn't always work. The local community is working on new ways to prevent the animals from affecting the children's study. Principal Baibua said he was thinking of relocating the monkeys to an open zoo or wildlife sanctuary. The monkey business usually stops after lunch when all the food has been eaten and the children settle down for an afternoon nap. Most of these cheeky visitors realise there's no one left to play with and head back to the mangrove forest where they belong. And while scenes like these seem unusual and amusing for now, they should also be taken as a warning for the future.